It's been said that the two most important days of a person's life are the day they're born and the day they figure out why. Hi, I'm Jimmy Lakey, the host of the Critical Mission podcast. I figured out what my why was. I thought early on I might be a politician. Maybe I'd be a pastor. Maybe I'd be a preacher. I started a music company. I host a radio show. But my why, it was all discovered on the streets of Africa, in Rwanda, when I met a little child that I adopted and decided I'm going to take care of widows and orphans in Africa. My organization, my why is riverspromise.org. What's your why? What about my guest? What's their why? We tell the story of people's why right here on the Critical Mission Podcast. Hey, everybody. Welcome back into the Critical Mission Podcast. It's Jimmy. Nice to have you tuned back in. I got a great guest today, but I know you're probably asking, or maybe you're not asking, and I'm going to tell you anyway. What's the cigar of the day? It is a Padron 4000. The anniversary series of Padrones are fantastic. The numbered series, a little bit more affordable, and they're also fantastic. There's no such thing as a bad Padron cigar. Padron. Mr. Padron, if you'd ever like to sponsor this podcast, we'd love to have you. We will only smoke Padrones here. Unless somebody else sponsors us, then we'll smoke those cigars because we're easy like that. Hey, don't forget our website is mymissioniscritical.com. Mymissioniscritical.com. That should link you out to the YouTube page so you can see this on video. It just connects you with a lot of the resources that we're developing on the podcast. Mymissioniscritical.com. Don't miss that. And Padron Cigars is Cigar of the Day. My guest here today on the Critical Mission Podcast, Jason Harrington. He's a Combat Silver Star awardee. Jason, hello, sir. How are you?
Good, Jimmy. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for coming into the little studio.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to tell a story, and it's a wild and crazy story. But for those who don't know what a Combat Silver Star awardee is, what is that?
So the Silver Star is the third highest award for valor you can receive in the military. So it's behind the Medal of Honor, which everyone's pretty familiar with. And then you have this Distinguished Service Cross, I believe is the second one, or Flying Cross. I think it depends on what branch you're in. And then the Silver Star is the third highest. It can only be awarded for valor, a valorous act in combat. So
you got the Combat Silver Star. We're going to tell that story in a second. How did that happen?
Sure.
But let's go back. So obviously you were in the military, in the infantry, and that's how you got a military award. What did you want to be before you showed up in the military? Little Jason.
Well, little Jason, I was raised by my parents split when I was in 5th grade. So I lived with my dad, and I have a brother a year older, a brother a year younger, and then a brother that's like 7 years younger. So my dad was a commercial airline pilot. So I kind of wanted to fly at one point, I think. But as I got older, got through high school and started college, I was just going to go be like a state trooper or something like that. It's kind of what I thought. Didn't really have like a goal or a drive at that point in my life. And
seemed like a good way to make a living.
It was, in Pennsylvania at the time, because I was pretty much raised in Pennsylvania, born in Louisiana, lived there until I was about 5, and then moved to PA with my dad's job. So I, didn't really know what I wanted to do, but state trooper started off at $55,000 a year, I think at that time. They paid for your, to go to the academy and all that stuff, but I did have some money to go to college, at least 1 year of college. So I started college, and it was about 2 months into my freshman year, and I had enough money to pay for a year. Some great aunt had left us some money, but enough for about a year at that time. And I said, well, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to finish paying for college? And my older brother, the year older, he was in the National Guard unit in Pennsylvania National Guard. And what it was the 104th Long Range Surveillance Detachment. So what that means is, long-range surveillance, traditionally, you would go out in front of the advancing line, which, we don't have lines anymore with war, but think about an advancing line. They would go out, sneak in, set up surveillance, take pictures, report back intel they see, back to the advancing front, let them know what they're coming into. And so basically reconnaissance and surveillance, right? Highly specialized unit. We had about 50 people in our detachment. A lot of guys in the detachment were former Rangers. A couple SF guys had floated through. My one team leader at one point was a former Marine Corps sniper. So pretty high tech, high speed guys. Infantry unit, airborne. So we practice airborne operations, jumping out of planes. So my older brother was in that. He had joined that the year before he graduated high school, did like a summer basic training his junior year, and then officially was in the unit after his senior year and graduated. So he says, dude, come join the unit, man. You get to jump out of airplanes. You get to shoot cool guns. basically go camping on the weekend because that's what you did. You went out in the field for 2 days on the weekend once a month, and we learned how to like build hide sites and do all that stuff. And he's like, yeah, he goes, and they'll pay for your college. So I was like, all right, cool. I loved geography in high school. So I loved World War II. I had the utmost respect for World War II guys. The cause that those guys fought for is, to me, is unreal, right? When you think about what they did and what they were up against. So always loved World War II and the history there. So when I joined, I didn't just join for college. I was like, if I got to go fight, I'll go fight. That would be, an honor if it happened. So, and this was in 2000, so pre 9/11. So joined in October. Went to basic training. Actually, kind of basic training got delayed for about 2 years. I didn't go to basic training until 2002 because the way the unit was set up, they had to bring me in as a parachute rigger and then transfer me to infantry, and that got delayed. But so I still went to drill every month with the unit, and was able to do most of the things they did. Obviously, I couldn't jump, I couldn't do airborne operations. So I did, was doing all the things pre-basic till I went to basic training, and then graduated basic and airborne school and was officially part of the unit in about 2002. So call came up in 04, I think around October of 04, we got notice that they were going to deploy a piece of our detachment. So like I said, we had 50 people or so in the detachment. We were running like 6-man teams. So we had like four or five 6-man surveillance, sniper and surveillance teams. They said the first 12 to 15 guys that raise their hand to volunteer, you'll probably stay together and you'll probably run like a traditional LURS detachment. If you don't volunteer at first and you need more guys, you might get piecemealed out. You might get attached to some unit guys you don't know or whatever, and go do whatever they need you to do. So the unit had gone to Bosnia, I think, in 03. So they said anyone had been to Bosnia, you're kind of last on the list to be forced to go if we had to, make you go. So I knew right away I hadn't gone to Bosnia, so I raised my hand right away. Raised my hand, volunteered, called my now my wife, girlfriend at the time. Didn't tell her I had volunteered, but told her that
you had to go.
that I had to go, and then called my dad and kind of did the same thing. Didn't say that I raised my hand, but just said they were deploying us, that night. So we say, where are we going? Well, you're going to Ramadi, Iraq. So Ramadi at the time was the worst city, most dangerous city, really in the world, let alone the 2 wars that were going on.
Now, you tell your family, you tell your girlfriend, deploying, we're going. And then you're calling them from Mississippi for 5 months in California.
Right.
Was the wait making it better for you, making you more comfortable? Were you just anxious to get over there? What was?
So for me, it made it worse because you just wanted to go. And being with the unit like we were, highly trained, a lot of guys with the background that I explained earlier, you knew we didn't need this bullshit training we were going through in Mississippi. And then the 1 month in California was kind of get you acclimated to desert type conditions. We were in basically Death Valley area is where NTC was. So you were experiencing 117 degree weather there. So that was good for that purpose, but that's probably all we needed was that 1 month in California.
So you head off to Ramadi.
Head off to Ramadi, fly into Kuwait, stay there for 2 weeks, do some training there. Then you head into Ramadi, you fly in on a C-130, and then you take a hop from the air base to Ramadi on a helicopter. Pretty cool experience. We had 2 guys on my helicopter that were from my hometown the National Guard. 2 of us were on the same block. So you had that feeling like, shit, if this helicopter goes down, it's a bad day.
Yeah.
Back in New Cumberland. So
you knew him when you got on the plane. You knew, or the helicopter. You knew who he was.
Yeah. So because he was in the National Guard, and his dad was a baseball coach in our town for all the years, and I looked at him, he looked at me, and we were like, this would be a bad day if something happened. But landed in Ramadi safely, got acclimated, did a couple, they call it ride seat rides when you replace the unit that you're replacing in war. So you go out with them, learn the area, they teach you what they're doing. Kind of teach you the ins and outs, where to go, where not to go, where the hot spots are, where the IEDs are going off, things like that. And it's important to know because that is really what kind of got us in trouble for the event that I'll explain here in a minute. But
so when you're over there, you're training, you're going to replace someone. Do they, at some point in all that training, do they sit down and go, okay, here's all your training. Now here's what you need to know. This could go bad. Make sure your affairs are in order. How much do they kind of tip your hand to tell you how much danger you're in?
So before you deploy, you get into country, you go through all that stuff. If you want to write, have a will ready to go. a lot of guys wrote death letters, had them, tucked away. That kind of stereotypical thing you see in movies, right? Where if you die, you send a letter.
If you're reading there's something bad has happened, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of thing. I did not write a letter. I had this kind of feeling that it was a bad omen to pre-write a death letter, so didn't do it.
So you kind of have as part of your training once you arrive, hey guys, get your stuff in order. We're not here. This is not a trip to Disneyland.
Exactly. Yeah, it's it's the real deal. So, and it doesn't really feel real. Even when you're on base, it doesn't feel real. I'd say the first time it felt real was the first IED that went off near one of our teams that almost took out a whole team. And then honestly, the first death, someone that died, is when it really feels real. I mean, Jimmy, infantry guys are a little fucked up in the head. We kind of had a poll going on how many people we thought would die over there based on the shitty training that we had in Mississippi. And not training on our guys' part, just the stuff was just not high speed stuff, right? So, but that all goes away once that first person dies. All that.
So how long did it take before that person died or the first IED goes off? Is this the first day? Or are you there for a week or so? Kind of. So we're making progress.
Yeah, the first IED that went off that I recall was probably a couple weeks. I think we were still doing the training with the guys that were there. That were kind of taking us out. We were out doing like kind of a foot patrol at night, and they walked near an IED that went off, and the hole in the ground was so big you could fit about 5 people inside that hole, that big of an IED. So I got a piece of shrapnel from that IED because we were in sector, so we joined up with them after they had gotten hit and kind of checked up on each other and then kind of rode back together is what we ended up doing. But that's when it kind of got real, I think, at that point. But then it got really real on September 19th, which is the date that I was blown up. My guys were killed, and that my event happened that earned me the Silver Star.
Let's talk about that. September 19th. What year are we in?
2005.
2005, a day that will live in infamy in your mind.
Yeah, definitely. What happened was, we were running 4-man sniper and surveillance teams, and basically what we would do is we would get dropped off at night. We would pre-plan a site to go to, so we would take over a house. Set up surveillance on a site known for IED placement. So you're trying to catch the guys putting it in the ground. If you catch them, you shoot them, take the shot or whatever. And so just pulling surveillance where you couldn't have vehicles, where, insert guys on foot at night, can't be seen, can't be heard. So we would go in places that, it was hard to get to. And that was our main mission. So we'd come off a mission on September 18th. We'd gone out, come back the morning of the 19th. And the guys who were doing the vehicle patrols were getting hit with IEDs left and right. So they were a lot of concussions, a lot of guys having to take some time off. So the way our unit ran was anytime we went on a mission, we always had a mandatory 24 hours off. Because of the nature of being on foot, being in the city with just 4 people, risk of capture was high, risk of ambush was high without support from Humvees, Bradleys, tanks, things like that. They wanted to make sure we were well rested before we went out on every mission. So we had, on our days off like that, they wanted us to help fill in with some of these Humvee units that were getting hit with IEDs. So I guess the night before, I wasn't aware of it, but my buddy Mike that was on my team, he had volunteered to go out on a Humvee patrol. And we'd come back that morning, and my team leader pulled myself and my buddy Will aside and said, "Hey, I wanted you guys to go out on patrol today with Mike. Mike's going, and Lieutenant Dooley, who was a lieutenant of our unit." Now, Mike was... he was out of a unit in Philadelphia, wasn't part of the LURS detachment that I was a part of. He got attached to us at some point in Mississippi. Mm-hmm. And then Will was a LURS guy, the original LURS guy. And then Lieutenant Dooley was a lieutenant from the Vermont National Guard that we got linked up to when we went into Kuwait. They pulled us out of the PA Guard and put us with this Vermont unit. And they were like a mountain infantry unit, pretty squared away guys. So Lieutenant Dooley was from Vermont, so we'd only known him, 2 months prior to this incident. But he was going to go out. Mike went out, and then it was up to me and Will to go out, be the third guy to go out in this Humvee. We went back and forth like, hey, you go out, or I'll take this one. And we settled on that Will would take this one and I would take the next one the next time we had to fill in. Went and got breakfast together that morning, came back. We had been out all night. I went to sleep. Woke up around noon, from what I recall. My timeline's real fuzzy on the exact times, but I think it was around noon when I woke up. We were just watching a movie. Heard a bunch of guys running outside. Someone knocked on our door and said, "Hey, Humvee was taken out. We have a couple KIAs, we believe, and we think it was your guys in that Humvee that had gone out." So Myself and my team leader rucked up, just grabbed our bags, grabbed our weapons, jumped in the next Humvee that was going out to help because, you got to go out. You help clean up the site, help secure the site. You want to start knocking on doors and seeing who may have been responsible for it. So hop in a Humvee. We fly down 2 Humvees. You always had 2 Humvees together at least. And so two Humvees. We were the lead Humvee, I believe. We went down towards the site, saw them kind of policing the site, cleaning everything up. Kicked in a door nearby. The guy was probably a couple hundred meters away, house a couple hundred meters away from this massive IED. So the IED that took out Mark, Mike, and Will, 6 to 8 155 millimeter mortar rounds, if that, to give you an idea, a 155 mortar drop from the air, traditionally you shoot them from the air, probably has a quarter to half-mile kill radius. And there were 8 of these things buried under the ground in the dirt that they had driven over. The Humvee was unrecognizable. It was just shredded metal. To not be too graphic, neither one of my guys were fully intact when they found the bodies and were able to recover the bodies. So I think Will, my closest buddy that was on my team, was probably the closest to being fully intact. As the IED had gone off underneath the front right driver's sides, and Will was in the gunner's hatch, so he took a little less of it, but instantly killed as well. So we kicked in a door, questioned a guy. He didn't hear anything, didn't see anything, which was total bullshit. You're 200 meters away from a massive explosion. Questioned him, couldn't get anything out of him. We decided to. What had happened was they were going over these railroad tracks, and these railroad berms are like these big 20, 25 foot berms that kind of separated the town from different parts of the town. They were going over the tracks. They got hit on that dirt road going over the tracks. And how I mentioned earlier, the guys that we replaced said, don't drive on dirt roads. We got complacent. We did it. And they kind of baited us into that, knew we would do it. And so we looped around the tracks, and we're flying down the road, probably doing about 40 miles an hour. Then just all of a sudden, everything just goes black. And that's the best way I can describe it is, I talked about how big those explosions were. I don't remember feeling an explosion. I don't remember hearing an explosion. Just everything just went black. And then my ears were ringing, kind of came to it. I don't know if I was knocked out. Don't remember if I was out for a second. Don't know if I was knocked out at all. You know what I mean? Don't really know. Dust was everywhere, smoke, because it was in the IEDs are under the dirt. So all that dirt flies up, hit us in the front of the Humvee, like underneath the engine compartment. Kind of came to it, ears are ringing, kind of had that whirring sound that you see in the movies sometimes, like the shell shock thing they try to recreate. Came to it. We all asked if we were okay, kind of felt around, felt my body parts. I was all there. And then we started engaging potential enemy locations where they would have been hiding to trigger that IED because somebody triggered it with a remote control. Got out of the Humvee. The other Humvee was falling behind us, turned around, hooked up to us with like a 5-foot tow strap. And that was our SOP, our standard operating procedure was you tow back out the way you came in because you assume because you didn't hit an IED, like that was the first IED you hit, that there would be more down the road, but not from where you came from. Well, they knew we knew that, right? So 5 feet away, being towed, dragged out by this Humvee, like, I don't know, a minute later after we're being dragged, the second IED goes off underneath the rear end of that Humvee, popping both Humvees up in the air, slam back down. Again, same thing. Everything goes black, smoke, dust, kind of come to it,
so
touch
you got
yourself.
hit by 2 IEDs within like 10 minutes.
Yeah. 5 to 10 minutes, something like that. And those IEDs, they estimated were 4 to 6 80 millimeter mortar rounds. They were like Chinese mortars they had gotten a hold of at some point. Iraq had a massive stockpile of mortars and warheads that they had gotten a hold of after we had cleared through. Right, we cleared through so quick we didn't secure a lot of those ammo dumps, and so then the locals went and collected all that. And Al Qaeda in Iraq, all those guys had collected that, and that's what they were using to. Improvised Explosive Device is what that, IED stands for. So whatever they could do, they were smart. Wow. So yeah, we're disabled. I get out of the Humvee. My platoon sergeant was in the second Humvee that was towing us, and I get out and I see him laying on the ground. I see blood on his leg. So I go over, check on him real quick. He's like, yeah, I'm good. I call the doc over. We had a medic riding with me in my Humvee. We all checked on each other, whatever. So now we're sitting there. We've got 2 disabled Humvees, no radios, no way to radio anyone. Luckily, on my LURS team, I was the RTO, the radio telephone operator. So I carried the radio with me, but normally didn't take my radio when I went in Humvees because the Humvees had a radio. So luckily I grabbed my bag with the radio in it and was able to, radio to hire,
Why would the Humvee not have a radio?
Well, they had them. They got blown up.
Oh, they got blown up. Okay.
Yeah, because the first Humvee, it hit the engine compartment, so all your electronics were done. So you had no way to transmit. And the second Humvee hit the rear end where all your antennas were. So again, there was no power to the Humvees.
You just happened to grab your bag and had a radio.
Had my portable radio with me, so I was able to pull that out, set it up, establish communication with the base, and then most importantly, establish communication with the guys. We hadn't realized just on the other side of the tracks was where our guys were killed. So they were policing up the scene and cleaning the scene up. We actually were firing rounds underneath the tunnels under the track, thinking that's where the triggermen could have been. And our rounds were impacting near our guys cleaning up the scene. So we almost had a green on green incident. But me getting on the radio, I guess, they told us, stop fucking shooting. Your rounds are near us. They're going to hit us with your rounds. So it's part of the reason they, with my award, that's one thing they, potentially save some green on green incidents. And, green on green is, you hear about that happening every once in a while. It's unfortunate, but it happens in war, chaos of war. So we were sitting there for, my brain tells me an hour to 2 hours. I don't know how long we were really stranded out there, but we were kind of hunkered down between the Humvees and the railroad tracks. On the other side of the Humvees were some apartment buildings, elevated positions, not too sloped roofs. Sorry, a little dig on the current situation with the Trump thing, but yeah, no. So, but you're in a low position where you don't want to be because they had snipers over there too. So they started sending people out to help us out, but we were so short staffed. So I think that's why we were waiting for a while. So they sent a 113 troop carrier down there, and very lightly armored, not one of the up armored things. Remember in 2005, we didn't have all the fancy up armored, vehicles. Some of the Humvees weren't armored like they should be, or like they are now. They don't even use Humvees in combat anymore. They got those big V-shaped, I don't know what they're called now. I've been out too long. But so it comes flying down the road, and I see it coming down the same road we were on. They had 13 guys packed in this unarmored thing. And I get on the radio, I'm like, get the fuck off the road. Get off the road now. Go off road. Because just thinking an IED, the size of the IED that hit us, if it hits that, underneath that's 13 more guys dead. So they stopped, pulled off the road, and they went off road and didn't go down the dirt road anymore. So I potentially was credited for potentially saving, 13 more lives is what they credited to. So at that point, actually between getting blown up and those guys coming down the road, that's when we actually found out it was our guys that were killed. We didn't know, we didn't know for sure. And in that situation, we were, waiting on the other side of the tracks where they were cleaning it up. EOD, the bomb disposal guys, were doing a post-blast analysis. So what they do is they go in the hole, they look to see what kind of IED they were using, trying to learn their technology. That guy saw a secondary IED in the hole. They knew that we did post-blast analysis. So they planted a second IED to kill the guy that goes in the hole looking. That EOD guy says, IED. He starts running. And now from my point of view, we just see this bomb go off on the other side of the tracks again, right? And later to come to find out, that was the Marine EOD guy doing his analysis. He takes off running, bomb goes off, peppers the back of his legs, blows his legs, his pants off a little bit. And there's actually there was a reporter from the Oklahoma News World Herald there at the time, or Omaha News World Herald. And he takes a picture as the guy was getting loaded on the helicopter. They wanted to put on a stretcher. He said, no, I'm walking out here. And he turns around and he flicks off the town. And it was captured. Like, it's a pretty iconic image. And, that was all because of what had happened that day. Helicopter swoops in, picks him up. So just a crazy, chaotic, well-planned ambush by those guys over there.
So all that within a few hours.
Yeah, a few hours.
So what sun comes up.
Well, so my guys get there in that 113. We continue to clear, kind of went and cleared some buildings or whatever. Finally got some tanks out there to hook the Humvees up to and just drag them out with tanks. Tanks are pretty solid. They weren't affected too much by IEDs over there. You need a pretty pretty massive IED to take out a tank. So, but we get back in that 113 vehicle carrier. We sent like sardine in there, probably 20 of us packed in this thing. And to be honest, Jimmy, that was the scariest moment of my life. Like everything that happened leading up to that, it happened when you're unaware, right? It just happens. Everything goes black. You don't really know what's going on. But that drive back and that thing, I mean, my butthole was as tight as it could possibly be. That, and then probably the next time I went out on mission later on after all that happened, were probably the two most scariest moments of my life. Because now you know what can happen and you can't do anything about it. You can't control it. So I go back to base. They made me go see medical right away. And I don't want to be there. I don't want to talk to anybody. I kind of just brush through medical, everything's fine. Ringing in my ears a little bit, some kind of muffling. And then we had to load our guys up from the body bags, take them out of the cooler, put them on a helicopter and send them to, on their way back to the States. So
wow.
Get back to our room. And I just think that's where, everyone there was silence. There was 4 of us to a room. Will was in my room. So he, was no longer there. Snuck some alcohol. People had sent us over from the States, had a drink, probably smoked a cigar. I don't know if it was a Padron or not, but, just sobering moment. Half my team was taken out, and my lieutenant, who was, I think he was 26, he was a young guy at the time. That was, yeah.
So how much longer were you over there? Did you?
So that was September of 2005. We didn't come home till end of May of 2006.
So you're over there still just reeling from.
Yeah. So myself personally, that was we had a 4-man team. Myself and my team leader were, the only ones that survived that. He was with us in the Humvees when we'd gone out to. He'd gotten blown up as well. So that was in September. So I just started kind of going out with our other 3 teams we had, would just fill in or just be like the 5th man on the team. And we were looking at putting another team together, maybe pulling some other guys, some of our other LURS guys that had gone over and got pieced out. We talked about maybe pulling them in, but then my team leader had to go home at the end of October, had some family issues. So I was the last person there for my 4-man team. So I just basically just filled in with the other teams because you started sending people home on 2 weeks. People would get to go home for 2 weeks. So it was about like a 3-week process. By the time they left, went home, you got 2 weeks at home. So I just became the fill-in on different teams and kind of settled in with one team, more or less, with my buddy Joe and team leader. Both my team leaders over there were named Jason. So
the original guys Jasons. You went over with from the PA National Guard, how many came home?
From our LURS detachment. Yeah. So all of us except Will. And like I said, Mike had been from a Philadelphia unit. Okay. So, but the detachment, the guys that deployed on the teams, 2 guys, only those 2 guys died. Luckily, no more were killed from us. Yeah. But I think the PA Guard lost in total around 70 people on that deployment, which is, pretty significant. And then we had fallen under the Marine division. The Marines ran Ramadi, so we'd fallen under their leadership. I think that whole deployment between the Marines and the National Guard guys that were over there, that we lost 150 people, I think, in a year. So, which is pretty significant.
So you came home the next May, and what's the next step?
At that point, so I got home in May. I think we got home in June. So by the time I got home, it was like end of June. My contract was up in October. My 6 years was up come October. So we had gotten 3 months off. Once we got back, we didn't have to go do drill or anything. So I was basically done at that point. They said, hey, you're good. I was 3.5 years in through college at that point, and I had my daughter. It's kind of part of my story, not my biological daughter, but she had been born right before I left. So, and then I had proposed to my wife when I was home on leave in February of 2006. So, I was ready to start a family, finish college, start a career. So that's what I did. I finished school up that year. I was able not to, didn't have to work or anything, just finished school with the funding and everything. And the money I'd saved over there. So I didn't have to work. I was able to move in with my wife and daughter at the time, and basically just started life at that point. Wow. So
how much did the events that happened back in Ramadi keep you up at night or change your focus in life, or maybe took away your focus in life? I mean,
that event didn't necessarily mess with my head. And like Will and I went back and forth on who should go on that mission. And I had some people say, well, lucky it wasn't you that had gone out. But, had I gone out, ABI did something that made a different turn that never took them to that place where they were blown up, right? So, it doesn't mean you can't just switch bodies and say, oh, you would have died. You would have been in that position and died. So I never really had like survivor's guilt or anything like that. The hardest part about transitioning is that you go from, and being in a National Guard, you're not doing Army every day. You're not playing soldier every day. You're going to work, you're going to school. A lot of guys were cops. A lot of guys were school teachers, et cetera. And then one weekend a month you go play Army, right? Yeah. It's just like you're a kid. And then you go to war. So you come back from this, you're hypersensitive. Everything is a big deal, right? There's nothing that's not a big deal over there. You have to be aware of everything, every sound, every piece of trash in the road could be covering an IED. So you come back from that and you're hyper vigilant and you react to things in a way that's how you reacted for the last year. So the smallest argument you get in your wife can turn into a big argument, right? And she wanted things to be normal, right? And she wasn't hyper vigilant for a year and didn't understand that I was. So and we didn't have the counseling. We didn't have, the war was in 2003. This is 2005, 2006. You didn't have the resources that guys necessarily were able to develop and have in, say, 2010 and beyond, right? So that was the hardest part, was transitioning back to civilian life and then going to college, with anti-war people. And, it wasn't Vietnam, right? Like,
sure.
They didn't treat us like Vietnam, but you still had to be around that, college atmosphere. Now, luckily I just commuted, went to class and came home. So I wasn't living on campus or anything, but that was the hardest part. It probably took me a good year plus to really kind of like settle back down.
Obviously kind of a near death experience, if you will. One of your best buddies, you had breakfast with that morning. He died a few hours after you had breakfast with him. Did all of that cause you to rethink the direction of life or the goals of life? And I want to be a cop. Maybe I'll be an airline pilot. Did any of that switch your mind?
Yeah, not necessarily with that. What it did to me was it made me realize that life can go away in a second, and it can go away, and you don't have control of everything. Up until that point, I controlled all my decisions, right? I controlled, I'm going to graduate high school. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to do this. That's the first moment that I realized, that I was consciously able to realize that I had no control over that. And that kind of made me rethink more so, like, I don't want to waste my life. Like, I can't stop moving forward, basically. Like, I got to keep moving forward. And at that point, I wasn't really into, part of me wanted to help veterans, the guys that came back with, no arms, no legs, missing limbs. I didn't really feel like I was hurt, quote unquote hurt. I have some TBI, some brain damage stuff from the explosions, but I did want to help, but I was so hyper focused on my family. We had the daughter before we left. We were getting married in 2007, that following year. We wanted to have a second kid. So I was really hyper focused on becoming a dad and finishing my degree and be able to provide for my family.
And knowing that as you learn, life could be snuffed out at any moment. That's the cool thing about the podcast, is that we have some guys that, go like me. I roam the streets of Africa and have a nonprofit organization. But we've said since we started the podcast that not everybody's going to start a nonprofit. Not everyone's going to do. Some people just wake up one day and realize, my why, I got to be the best damn dad I could possibly be. I got to serve my fellow brothers that suffered in war. Yeah. Do that the best I can be. It's not like we all have to start an organization or do something that's official. Sometimes it's just being the best dang dad you could be, because you wake up and say, life's short. I better take advantage of what I can.
Yeah. And that's a good segue into my why. And I would say my first why that I've realized in life was being the best dad, being the best husband that I could be, trying to guide my kids, even guide my wife, that, and I've said in another speech I did, like, everybody gets blown up, right? And your blown up is different. And your blown up is big and your blown up is small. Everyone gets blown up. Your first breakup as a 12-year-old or whatever, you got blown up, right? At that point, that's probably the worst thing that's happened in your life. Your parents get divorced. You got blown up. When you're 3 years old, the kid stole your toy in kindergarten or preschool. You got blown up, right? Kids react in a way that, that's the worst thing that's happened to them. So being able to help, guide my kids that, you're going to get blown up and you can't do anything about it. But the only thing you can do is keep moving forward. Because if I didn't keep moving forward, if I didn't finish college, if I didn't get a degree, if I had drowned myself in a bottle, stuck needles in my arms, what example would I have been to my kids? What example would I have been to other veterans? What would I have been to the families of my friends that died? Like their kids, their brothers, their husbands, their sons didn't have an opportunity to finish life. It was taken from them. And here I survived and I'm out being a shithead. And you're not doing a justice to them, right?
So you did keep your head focused and did move forward. Other guys come back in those situations, don't they? Do hide it in a bottle. They do other things. You were telling me a story before we started about you stayed in touch or ran across Mike's daughter.
Yep. So Mike was 36 when he was killed, a little older than most of us when we were there. He was 36 when he was killed. His daughter was, I believe, 5 years old. Her name was Sam Megan, Samantha. I had not met Sam until April of this year, of 2024.
Oh, wow.
We'd moved to Colorado about 12 years ago. So, and prior to that, just didn't have a chance.
So she was 5 when her dad was blown up.
Yeah, was killed. So she knew him, a little bit, whatever a 5-year-old can remember at that time. So I asked her, she remembered things.
Was this a planned meeting at the graveside or did you just happen to be there at the same time?
What happened was my son Parker he's 16. He plays 7-on-7 football. Very similar to River, I think. So he's like defensive back, wide receiver. Yeah. So he got involved in that 7-on-7 and we had a tournament in New Jersey outside of Philadelphia. And Mike was from Philadelphia and his family was from Philly. So we were in New Jersey. I looked up where Mike was buried, and on Sunday was the last day of the tournament, and we were done at about 10 o'clock. So I'd said and we were about a half hour from the cemetery, heading back towards PA. We have family, grow up in PA, we have family in PA, and we were going to go visit family and stuff while we were there. So I messaged Maria, his widow, and Sam and said, hey, we're about a half hour from the cemetery. You guys want to meet up there tomorrow? I hadn't been to Mike's gravesite yet. I'd been to my Lieutenant Mark Dooley's buried at Arlington, and then my buddy Will's buried in Reading, PA. And we were real close with Will's wife up until she was, I told you before, she was murdered about 4 years ago. So we'd been real close with her, been to his gravesite, but never been to Mike's gravesite. So I said, I want to go see Mike. And they said, well, we're about an hour away, but we'll meet you there on Sunday. So we meet them at the gravesite. First time I ever meet Sam. Great kid. With all the cards stacked against her dad dying. I think there was some family issues with other, men trying to step up and they really didn't. So it was really just her and her mom that moved forward after he was killed. So she had all the reasons, not to be a good kid, maybe not go to college, not do something with herself. But I think she's recently or about to graduate and is going to be a school teacher. So I meet her there, first time meeting her. We talk about Mike, hey, he got any stories about Mike? You can tell me that. I don't know. And I told a couple funny stories from my time with Mike over there. And then, we're getting ready to leave. So I go to give her a hug and I give her a hug and the way she hugged me it felt different. Like just something felt different. Maybe it was the way she squeezed me or something, but I could feel something different. And so we say our goodbyes. I get in the car and I start driving. We start driving on our way back to PA. And my wife is, instantly Facebook friends Sam, and she's chatting with Sam back and forth. And, without me saying anything to anyone at this point, Sam says to my wife in her text, she goes, I'm so glad I got to meet you guys. And when I hugged Jason, I could feel my dad. So for like one of the first times I could actually feel my dad. Like I feel my dad through Jason, because I was one of the last guys to be with Mike. We were on that mission the night before, and I had said to my wife, same thing. I'd felt something different, like two separate things with those feelings. And
so if you had have given up or taken life focus not seriously, the daughter would have never had that moment. Almost a moment of closure.
Possibly, yeah. We may not have met.
Yeah.
So, or she, whether maybe she had closure, but, I don't know what it's like to lose.
Just a nice memory.
A father. Yeah.
Just a nice memory. So you said something true about your why. It's not like we're going to give some website at the bottom and anything like that, but it's just a lesson that all of us, I like what you said, get blown up.
Yep.
It could be a marriage, could be a business, could be The job could be you're 7 and someone steals
Car
your bicycle.
accident.
Car accident.
Right? Yeah.
And your why really is to use your story to tell people, keep going.
Yeah.
You got a purpose.
You're going to get blown up. You don't know when you're going to get blown up, but it's going to happen. You've been blown up, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Jimmy.
A few times.
Yeah, exactly. So, I continue to get blown up.
Yeah.
There's some, issues in our family's lives that we've had to deal with. And it just, every day I got, the Microsoft outing this morning blew me up from work. I wasn't able to work. It's terrible. I know. But you get blown up every day, and it's, some are minor, but some are big. And, me getting blown up is no different than somebody else, emotionally getting blown up. Right. And like I said before, the physical part of getting blown up didn't hurt. That didn't hurt. I don't remember it really. But the emotional and some of the other stuff that's happened in my life has been worse than what I went through in Iraq. So
some of the stories that you are able to tell, I know you've done some speeches, you've done some podcasts, and that's your message is, hey, keep going,
no matter who you are. It's not a message to just veterans. Veterans, listen, you got to keep going too.
Yeah.
But everyone that can hear my voice or hear my story, keep going, because it's gonna lead you to something. If you have that attitude, the one I did work with a veteran nonprofit called The Next Objective, and that was the point was, what's your next objective? Everyone takes 2 steps back at some point. Are you going to take that? What's your next step? What's your next step forward? Right. So just keep going, because you never know when your moment comes. And that moment may have been at that cemetery. That might be the defining moment of why I lived or why I needed to be here. I don't know. So, those questions are higher than me.
Yeah.
They're way above my pay grade to
Don't
answer.
quit.
Yeah, I'm a spiritual person. I believe in God, and I think that, I don't know. I can point to several things in my life on why I lived. No one deserves to die. No one. And I say this, and I don't ever want it to sound horrible, but like, it sucks those guys died, but I'm glad I didn't. Right. Yeah. I'm not that person that says, "Oh, I would take their place." I want to be here. Yeah. Right. It's horrible that they died, but no, I wouldn't want to trade. Wouldn't want to trade with them. Right.
Well, you figured out a purpose beyond just anything. And without those experiences, maybe you would have just, what you said, just earned that good living of $55,000. You've been just a state. Nothing wrong with being a state patrol. Yeah. But because you got blown up, you're able to encourage other people in a way that you couldn't encourage them before.
Yeah, correct. And I didn't. I changed my major, actually. What I do now is I make maps for a living. I'm a GIS. You always love geography. Analyst, so yeah. So the geography and history, it all kind of goes together. But I got a good job. I love my job, and but my passion really is, I think, telling my story and just hoping if one person hears my story and says that guy can do it, then I can do it. Yeah. That's all I want.
You're all going to get blown up.
Yeah.
Jason Harrington, thank you, sir.
Jimmy, I appreciate you.
Thanks for your service to your country as well. That's this edition of the Critical Mission Podcast. We got another exciting one coming up. Lots of great guests in the queue. But Jason Harrington, thanks for the day. Don't forget, our website is mymissioniscritical.com. We'll see you next time.